I'm Mark.
I'm John. And with all due respect to Jeb, we can have all kinds of fun with punctuation, too. Just like that. Happy National Lobster Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, a Jeb exclamation. Moments ago, Jeb exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, Bush finally made his White House bid official. We did a fast turnaround on the sizzliest dynamite that John Ellis Bush detonated in Miami, in case you were busy.
The presidency should not be passed on from one liberal to the next. Our country's on a very bad course. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? The question for me is, what am I going to do about it? And I've decided I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
Mark, you were there, on the scene, live. The perennial, age-old question. How do you do?
Best speech he's given since he made it clear he was going to run for president. More engaged, more upbeat, more smiley, more emotional. Wasn't great throughout, but the best speech he's given, and it will send a message to his supporters who become a little nervous that he is going to fight to win this, and he gets the point that he's going to have to, as he says, show his heart. Today he did more than I've ever seen him do.
Nothing troubles me more, Mark, than not finding myself in the disagreement zone with you. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you on this first point. Certainly the best speech he's given in the period of time since he's been a proto-candidate and now an official candidate. He started slow, I thought. He was very casual coming out there. No tie, no jacket, just looking like a soccer dad there in that blue Oxford shirt. But as the event proceeded and the crowd and the energy and enthusiasm built, he started to kind of surf that wave. He got more emphatic. He got more energetic. By the end, as you know, he was straying from his prepared text and riffing, something you don't see him do that often. By the end, I thought, as you say, I thought he was the best we've seen him, and the kind of Jeb Bush who you can imagine. If he could keep up that kind of attitude, that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of palpable optimism, he'll be a very strong candidate on the stump. I don't know if he can, though.
Yeah, he's going to have to keep it up, and people are going to look at this and say, is this a one-off, or can Jeb Bush deliver that kind of energy? But I was surprised, not as much policy as I thought there would be.
Right.
But the themes about being a Florida governor, being a reformer, saying, ironically for some, I'll go to Washington and shake things up, even though, of course, he's the son and brother of presidents.
Yeah, you know, I don't like it when I see candidates say that they're going to hit 4% growth with that level of precision and then not say anything about how they're going to get there. I always find that's a little hollow. But I agree with you. He hit the high points, the bullet points on policy, made it clear where he stands on things. Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was good for him was he was surrounded by supporters. And I think part of what Jeb Bush keys off of is when there are people he knows and like him. That helped him today because the room was filled with people who known him a long time and like him. All right. A central part of Jeb's announcement is he had to make a lot of choices. He's got to make more choices in some ways than the other candidates. John, in all the choices he made today about staging, attendance, content to the speech, did he make good ones?
Well, the biggest one that everyone's going to talk about, Mark, and we talked about it while we were broadcasting and streaming the event, was the absence of his father and, more pointedly, the absence of his brother. His mother was there in the room. Obviously, his kids were there. His wife was there. But that absence of George W. Bush, it was something they had to do, but it's still going to get a lot of remarking. I believe you said it would have been worse if he had been there. It would have gotten more commentary. But it was noticeable that the one big member of the Bush family, not independents, was the controversial brother.
Yeah. Smart choice to do it at this community college. You can hear there's like a little street festival that they've created and the music playing as part of a much more diverse crowd in terms of economics and race than you would normally find at a Republican announcement. And that's purposeful. Jeb Bush is doing what his brother did when he ran for president, saying to people, I will be the leader of a more inclusive Republican Party. That's been one of his hallmarks. And today, this setting clearly meant to send that impression. He cares about education, and he wants a more diverse Republican Party.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing I thought that was a good choice, Mark, was for him to talk in the way he did about his wife. The personal sides of the speech, there were not a lot of them, and they came toward the end, but I thought they were quite effective when he got there. And of course, the period where he spoke for an extended period of the speech in Spanish, fluent Spanish. We know he can do that, but I got to say, every time he does it and I see it, I think, man, it's impressive, and it's going to be a big electoral asset for him, especially if he becomes the nominee of the party.
Another choice he had to make was when he was heckled by some immigration protesters who were upset about his support now or acceptance of an immigration solution involving a path to legal status as opposed to citizenship. It came as their protest came, they stood up with T-shirts on, came as he was paying homage to his mother. And he very skillfully made the decision on the fly to acknowledge the protesters, speak about the fact that he's going to support immigration reform as president, and then go back to his mom. All very effective, good choices in real time.
Right. All right. Okay, we will come back to Jeb, exclamation point, in a moment. But now the candidate whose name came up a couple times today in Miami, Hillary Clinton, who talked to the press up in Concord this afternoon, Concord, New Hampshire, an event about as rare as a lunar eclipse. She doubled down on her trade position, whatever exactly that is.
And I've said from the very beginning that I would judge the TPP on whether it protected American workers, whether it raised wages, and whether it was good for our national security. And therefore, I hope that we can see this time as one to take advantage of and try to make it stronger on behalf of our country.
Mark, we've been waiting for Hillary to take a stance on the trade bill for quite a while. She still hasn't really, not in the way that members of Congress have to. So the question to you is whether she's helping or hurting herself by not taking a more decisive position.
I think she's helping herself. It's unfortunate because it'd be great for her to take positions, but this is part of her campaign's general view that a lot of stuff that gets talked about on cable and broadcast television and speculated about on Twitter and the web doesn't matter right now, and that she's better off hedging. She is moved a little bit more with her comments yesterday and today towards the Nancy Pelosi position and skepticism towards the deal. But I think being vague and not being decisive right now helps her, because a decisive position could leave her exposed on the left, and there's no way she's not a free trader, but she doesn't want to say it now.
Well, I don't know, man. I think, look, you can see the political calculation here. There's no doubt about it. She doesn't want anybody to get to her left. She wants to try to cover her left flank, and yet she wants to leave herself enough room to be in favor of this trade deal if it eventually gets signed. But that kind of calculation doesn't look good on Hillary Clinton, I don't think. And when you hear Bernie Sanders say, what's the deal here? We all have a position. You're for it. You're against it. Come on, pick a side. I think that's a strong posture for Sanders to have, and it does make her look a little bit like some of the more attractive elements of Clintonian triangulation and fudging that we've seen from her in years past.
But no question. But one reason I think she's relying on and citing Nancy Pelosi now is Pelosi clearly had a lot of ambivalence here and didn't take a position herself until the end. And I think Clinton and her advisors believe that the more she can fuzz up, the more she can keep her left flank protected, the better. And she's willing to take the hit on what in the press is universally seen. You saw it today with the questions in New Hampshire as something that's unbecoming.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, she's a woman who has a lot of convictions about a lot of things, and I think both of us think, having lived through the first Clinton term, knowing what her husband's economic philosophy is, knowing how much of a globalization guy he is, and how much of a pro-globalization person she has always been, and in her heart she is pro-free trade, but that makes the hedging on this all the more, I think, not damaging, but unbecoming, as you put it.
No question, but I think they're right, just in crass political terms. If she takes a position, it's worse. They're willing to weather this storm.
It's crass, but it's the right thing to do. All right, coming up, Jeb, and Hillary's surrogates, Tetris style. We'll be right back. Miami is bouncing just the way it does on a hot, steamy summer night. And we want to relive the big speech by the candidate named Jeb, exclamation point. So let's start with how he talked about his executive experience.
There's no passing off responsibility when you're a governor. No blending into the legislative crowd or filing an amendment and calling that success. As our whole nation has learned since 2008, Executive experience is another term for preparation, and there is no substitute for that. We're not going to clean up the mess in Washington by electing the people who either helped create it or have proven incapable of fixing it.
Mark, Jeb Bush's main calling card in terms of tangible experience, obviously, is his period of time as a two-term governor of Florida, the 43rd governor of Florida, trying to become the 45th president of the United States. How strong do you think the case was that he made today on those grounds?
I think he had a good feel for it, but I don't think it was nearly strong enough for people not from Florida. I don't think, in a speech like this, you can't do everything, but I didn't think it was quite tangible enough. But he does have a confidence about it. He does feel like what he did in Florida, given the size of the state, given the problems he inherited, he does feel, I think, that he can make that case with confidence. When we get on a debate stage, or when people start saying, well, why is your record as governor of Florida better than Scott Walker's record as governor of Wisconsin, I think he showed today he's got confidence about what he can say, but I think he's going to have to be more specific about it.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. Look, I mean, he was a, no doubt, both successful and conservative governor of Florida, but given the fact that, as we know, you and I both know, as we go around the country, you run into Republican voters who don't know very much about this race. They know what Scott Walker has done as governor of Wisconsin. He fought the unions and he won. No one can tell you, among most Republican voters, what Jeb Bush's signatures were in Florida. And to the extent they know anything about it, it's for things they don't like Common Core. So I think you're right. If he's going to sell this executive experience, if he's going to sell the Florida record, he's got to sell it a lot harder than he sold it today. I thought it was one of the weaker parts of the speech.
Yeah. They'll do advertising on it. I suspect they'll do direct mail and emails on it. But what can give them some heart is the people here and donors around the country who, of course, have been extraordinarily supportive of Jeb Bush so far. They know his record in Florida. That's a big part of why they're so enthusiastic about his candidacy. So he does have a template. He just has to figure out how, not in a salon in New York or at a meeting in Chicago where he's been able to sell his record as governor to rich people, can he sell that record to a broader audience of Republican caucus goers and primary voters?
As long as we're talking about Florida, Mark, we should mention, our colleague Josh Green's got a piece up today at BloombergPolitics.com about the fact that an extraordinarily large percentage of the voters who are currently registered in Florida have never voted for Jeb Bush, have never even seen Jeb Bush's name on a ballot, whereas Marco Rubio, about 95% of those registered voters have seen Marco Rubio's name on a ballot. I got to say, it's interesting. I mean, it's a long way off, but the battle for Florida is going to be important, and it looks to me like, at least on that basis, Jeb is not in as strong a position there as his rival Marco Rubio might be.
Well, look, if they end up facing off in this primary, he's going to have to sell his record in this state to some voters in this state who just aren't going to be familiar with it. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Another piece of sound from the event. Jeb Bush obviously had a lot of choices about what to say and not to say about his family's political legacy.
And in this country of ours, the most improbable things can happen as well. Take that from a guy who met his first president on the day he was born, and his second on the day he was brought home from the hospital. Long before the world knew my parents' names, I knew I was blessed to be their son. And they didn't mind it at all when I found my own path.
John, obviously it's a complicated minefield to get through. How do you think he did?
I thought he did all right. Look, I mean, we talked earlier about the big decision he made, which was to keep his brother, 43, away from this event. Obviously, his father, pretty old and pretty frail. His father was not there, too. Those are big optical decisions. But when it came to the people who were there and the people he talked about and the way that he talked about it, I thought it was pretty effective. I don't think it's going to solve the problem for him by any means. That's going to be a long-term project trying to get past the problems that the family name poses for him. But this is about the best way that he can try to make some lemonade out of these lemons.
Yeah, I thought for elites, he did a good job. The question is this message going to break through to real voters off the announcement today? Will it dispel anything? I don't think so. But again, I thought in terms of the written speech, how it was crafted, and Bush's comfort level, it was very strong.
Well, look, you think about it, you pointed out earlier that one of the big things he's selling is electability, and the name is a huge problem for electability. Even if you're a Republican voter who doesn't mind George W. Bush, who doesn't mind the Bush name yourself, you see that as a drag on his electability, and that's going to be, I think, one of the central puzzles that he's got to puzzle through as he makes his way towards the nomination or not, is how to convince people that, hey, electability is my calling card, and that somehow this Bush name, whatever you think of it, is not going to drag me down.
Absolutely. The other thing is his son spoke before him, and I think an undervalued asset that Jeb Bush has here are his two sons, one land commissioner in Texas, the other real estate person here. Very strong in terms of being able to be surrogates for their dad, part of a new generation.
All right, let's move on to one more piece of sound here. Jeb talked a little bit toward the end of the speech about the crowded Republican field and how he plans to stand out.
And I know that there are a lot of good people running for president, quite a few, in fact. And not one of us deserves the job by right of resume, party, seniority, family, or family narrative. It's nobody's turn. It's everybody's test. And it's wide open, exactly as a contest for president should be. I will campaign as I would serve, going everywhere, speaking to everyone, keeping my word, facing the issues without flinching, and staying true to what I believe. I will take nothing and no one for granted. I will run with heart, and I will run to win.
Mark, that I thought was really almost the high point of the speech. He was rolling by the time he got there toward the end. There's not a lot of poetry in this speech. It's mostly prose, but I thought that had real momentum and a real lift to it, the way he talked about it, bracing with confidence and optimism.
Well, one of the striking things for people here in the national press, our colleagues, and from me, is there's emotion today, a kind of being comfortable with emotion that I've not seen very often from Jeb Bush. I want to bring in our guest, Al Cardenas, the former chair of the Florida party, who has known Jeb Bush a long time. Have you seen him be that fired up, or was today a high point?
I've seen him this fired up when it counts, and today it all counts. This is the start of the journey. We've been in the preliminaries, but I think you're going to see a Jeb Bush that has the energy to go to the distance, and I think you'll see him get stronger with time. Listen, he hadn't run for office in almost a decade, and these first few months he was getting his sea legs from under him, and you saw him today, and this is the beginning of a journey, but you can expect Jeb Bush at this level of energy and involvement and emotion from now on.
Al, it seems safe to say that things have not gone perfectly so far with this operation, and today there's an announcement. Is it the case that people around the country and in Florida and on the campaign staff will be reassured and needed to be reassured by a strong performance today?
You know, Mark, it's the markers hitting the goals that we've had that have been important. Every single thing we've wanted to do in terms of how we want to organize the states, the resources we needed to function, the staff we wanted to hire, everything that we set out to do as goals in this campaign have been met. The number of people who wanted endorsing the governor, you saw here that 11 of the 17 members of Congress from Florida, every cabinet member, most of the state legislators are with him.
It's going great. Is he the front runner?
You know, I think he set the bar today. Whether he's a front runner, I think he said it in your segment just now. This is a tough contest with a lot of good, young, talented people, and I thought Senator Gates said it all. I said, you know, we've had a young president who had to learn in the job, and it didn't go so well, and we've got a seasoned man who could be a great commander-in-chief.
What's the thing that's most likely to stop Jeb Bush from being the next president of the United States?
Somebody better than him.
Is there somebody out there who you think could be better? Your friend Marco Rubio.
Ever since Eisenhower, the candidate that's had the best structure, the most resources, and done the best job has won. And we believe that'll be Jeb Bush. Now, if somebody else can prove us wrong, and me wrong, that they can raise more resources, be better organized, and a better candidate, they'll win.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to set a pretty high bar.
You think the old rules will apply? The person most money, best organized will be the nominee?
Over the long run, sure.
Yeah. Last question. Did you spend time with the family today at all?
I did.
Yeah. How did they seem? Emotional?
Oh, so excited.
Yeah.
You know, this is a huge moment. I mean, this family is a very close family. Columba, the 3 kids, Jeb. It was really cool when his mom, you know, decided to come and join him as well. And look, it's a very emotional day for him. Very emotional day for me. I went to the school. I was a low-income kid, had no other way to get to college. It was great.
Okay, Al, thanks very much. Al Cardenas, former chair of the party here and a big supporter of Jeb Bush. We'll be talking to you a lot more. John?
All right, our thanks again to Al Cardenas. When we come back, Team Clinton, the Dodges, the Spin, and the Politburo after this. A trio of Hillary Clinton's spokespeople took to the morning shows today and this weekend. But instead of straightforwardly answering questions, they gave off the distinct whiff of the Politburo circa 1985. In case you missed it, let's go to the tape.
The biggest problem for her is trust. The voters, and the polls have shown this, voters do not trust her. How does she overcome that?
Well, first of all, no poll shows that voters don't trust Hillary.
They don't
Clinton.
Find her honest and trustworthy.
Well, no poll says that.
Only 42% view her as honest and trustworthy, compared to 57% who do not.
You know, the way questions get asked, determine certain ways they're answered. The critical question in this election is, who do you trust to fight about you every day? Who cares about people like you? Number of polls at the same time that one question, which was just a binomial question by CNN, were asked.
The president's trade bill. This is an issue that every single Democrat who has announced that they're running for the presidency has taken a position on, except for the one who helped push it. And maybe even, did she even help write it? I believe she helped write it.
Well, I can't speak to that because I wasn't in the State Department.
We are making progress toward finalizing a far-reaching new trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The so-called TPP will lower barriers, raise standards, and drive long-term growth.
But there's a vote this week in Congress. Doesn't she have to weigh in pretty quickly? Because if there's no fast-track trade authority, the president can't make the deal.
Well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see, won't we? We'll see, we'll see, we'll see, we'll see, we'll see.
After the break, we're going to head back to Miami. The big day and a little glitch. Before we go, an instructive reminder that not everything always goes perfectly according to plan. Here's the musical opening act for Jeb! Bush today in Miami.
I don't know. Is it a bad cable? Maybe we can put a mic on it? Here.
But then you can't sing.
Okay.
In the end, they hooked up all their gear, they played the Bee Gees, and it sounded pretty good.
Yep. It was a good group. All right, a good event, too, for Jeb Bush. Remember, we're on twice a day at 5 and at 8. Thanks for watching. Until tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. Sayonara.